And to be honest, why do I always film next to the road? And welcome back to the channel, and an extra special welcome to the recent influx of subscribers that found me through Prozzy's channel. It was great to work with him, an awesome collaboration, and I'm sure we'll do plenty more together in the future. But as for today, just me on my lonesome, and I'm continuing with the slightly more serious themed videos, as there's something I've wanted to talk about on the channel for a little while, and that is Taiwan's national minimum wage. So before we get to the current day minimum wage and get my opinion on that, I thought it would be a good idea to take a look back historically at the minimum wage here in Taiwan and how it's progressed since 1936, when the first Minimum Wage Act was introduced by the government, which stated adult wages must maintain the standard of living necessary for oneself and two other family members that were incapable of self-support. But with no specific amount, and of course the outbreak of World War II just a few years later, this act was never put into place. And it wasn't until 1955 when the president at the time decided that anybody with a monthly wage of less than 300 Taiwan dollars, they should have their wages raised to that amount. So the minimum wage was set there at $300 per month for about 8 years, until in 1964 when it received an absolutely huge 50% increase to 450 Taiwan dollars a month. Bearing in mind, of course, that all of these figures are based on an economy that had a GDP per capita of about 1,000 US dollars per person. Compare that to today's GDP per capita in Taiwan of about 25,000 US dollars, and you can see how it might be difficult for me to put some of these older figures into context. But after that raise in 1964, the government continued throughout the 20th century to raise the minimum wage at random intervals and random amounts. 1968, 600 Taiwan dollars a month. 1980, $3,300 per month. 1983, 5,700. 1994, 14,010. 1995, $14,880. 1996, 15,360. 1997, 15,840. And then, strangely, for 10 years, there was no increase in the national minimum wage until 2007, when, interestingly, it was the first time that the minimum wage included working holiday hours. But anyway, that pretty much brings us into present day, and coincidentally around about the same time that I arrived in Taiwan 11 years ago, and the national minimum wage was set to $17,280 back in 2007. And since then, it has gradually increased year on year to today's level, which as of the 1st of January 2019 has been set at 23,100 Taiwan dollars per month, or if you are a part-time worker, 150 Taiwan dollars per hour. So that's the basics of the situation and the amount at which Taiwan's national minimum wage currently stands. But the big question is it enough? Is $23,100 per month enough for somebody to live on? Well, of course, it's difficult to say, and it's equally difficult to compare Taiwan's minimum wage with that of a different country. So many factors such as cultural differences, inflation, cost of living have to be taken into account when comparing. But I did have an idea. What I will do, I will take each country's national minimum wage and compare it as a percentage of that country's GDP per capita. Therefore, let's start with Taiwan, whose national minimum wage is about 9,000 US dollars per year. We'll stick with US dollars for this comparison, just so we don't get any confusion. Yes, $9,000 per year here in Taiwan against the national GDP per capita of... Where did I put that number? Where did I put that number? of 25,000 US dollars means that Taiwan's national minimum wage represents about 36% of that GDP. Whereas in the USA, people have a higher national minimum wage of 15,000 US dollars a year, but it only represents 28% of their GDP. Therefore, for every dollar earned by the country as a whole, USA are paying a lower national minimum wage. My country, the UK, I am proud to say, pays a national minimum wage of 49% of the GDP, while our friendly cross-strait neighbors over in China, with an annual minimum wage of less than 2,000 US dollars, are paying just 22% of their GDP per capita. But by far the leaders of the world in this comparison are the Australians, who not only have the highest minimum wage in the world, but also an incredibly high GDP per capita. And they pay 53% of their GDP per capita annually as a minimum wage. Pretty good stuff, but is also skewed by a relatively small population compared to a huge export market that they have. But anyway, we probably are getting a bit lost in figures and numbers, which is something I want to avoid, as what I want to talk about is how the national minimum wage here affects people and whether or not it's enough to live on. Now I feel that this is where knowing a little bit more about the culture benefits me in being able to talk about it, because there is a lot of money in Taiwan, a lot of money. And even the most simple looking on the surface, a very frugal looking family are probably sitting on a lot of money inherited through the generations. Therefore, people who choose to follow the traditional family model and don't move out of their house as we do in the West when we're 18, 21 years old, these people can save a hell of a lot of money and don't need to worry about rent or mortgages as we do back in the West. Many houses are already bought and paid for with no mortgage and kept in the family, passed down through generations. Here in Taiwan, if you're a son, then you just stay in the family home, or if you're a woman and you marry into another family, then you're likely to move into your husband's family home. Therefore, a minimum wage job paying 23,100 a month may be enough for somebody to live on and get by on a relatively simple life. So just because somebody here can live on $23,000 a month, does that mean they should? Does that make it okay? Well, as usual in these videos, I'm gonna look at it from two different angles. First of all, from the angle or the perspective of a worker looking to support his or her family, especially if they are not following the traditional Taiwanese route of staying in the family home, then almost certainly the minimum wage as it stands, even if two people in the same household are earning the same amount, isn't really enough for a family to pay their rent, pay their bills, feed and clothe their family, and also enjoy life, to have a good time. The minimum wage in Taiwan in this situation is probably, in my opinion, not enough. But if we look at it from a different angle, an angle that not many of us are in, the employer's angle in Taiwan, people who are paying the salaries, paying the wages, then this is maybe where I'm gonna start some fireworks. Because although it's easy for the big companies, the 7-Elevens, the Carrefours and the department stores to pay this minimum wage, even though they claim it's not, I feel that it's the small to medium-sized businesses that are really gonna struggle. Because I feel that the majority of Taiwan's success has come from these small to medium-sized businesses who work incredibly hard, maybe employing a few family members, or if they need to, an outside employee, paying them this minimum wage and basically just getting by on the skin of their teeth. Taiwan's biggest export is its manufactured goods. Cheaper ones 20 or 30 years ago, but now technological goods, and a large proportion of these were made and put together by minimum wage paid employees. If the minimum wage goes too high for these companies and they can't afford to pay their workers, produce their goods, then of course they'll close. And if too many of these smaller companies close, then that strong economic backbone that Taiwan has built for itself could break and cause us all serious problems. I'm certainly not saying that these minimum wage employees should be taken advantage of, and of course everyone deserves a basic living wage. In fact, in 2012, the executive yuan, a part of the government in Taiwan, they tried to put forward a motion that would see the minimum wage decoupled and separate for local Taiwanese minimum wage workers and foreign workers. But many people in Taiwan opposed this motion, and thankfully the plan was never put into law, demonstrating how the people of Taiwan strongly believe that everybody deserves pay representative of how hard they work. But of course, finding a balance or an economic balance is an absolute nightmare for whoever is responsible. So let's just say I'm glad it's not me that's responsible for setting the minimum wage here in Taiwan, or indeed any other country. But I've tried my best to give you some of the facts and the basic opinion that I have around this minimum wage situation. If you have anything to add, then please join the debate down in the comments section. And if you think that there's something that I've missed or some mistake that I've made with some of those numbers, then again, correct me down below. This channel is anything but a dictatorship, and freedom of speech is very much welcomed. As for now, time to say goodbye, wrap this video up. Thanks for watching to the very end of the video. For doing so, you are welcomed into the team VVVIP. And as always, thanks to my patrons over on Patreon for your unending support. It's very much appreciated. As for now, time to say goodbye. I'll see you next time in My Life in Taiwan. Peace.